we at Mange Management are wild about wombats. I think that's fair to say. A little bit about Mange Management. We have been operating in present form for about 13 years now. We are all volunteers. We've got daytime jobs, and are infield as infield volunteers and as administration volunteers as well. We originated from a small group of concerned people wanting to relieve the suffering of wombats with mange. We do receive over 1,000 reports annually, and we aim to provide treatment, medications, advice, and also support. So we've got over 90, almost 100 now, infield and admin volunteers all together now across the state of Victoria. So it's not just around Melbourne, so we cover the whole state. And the treatment practices are based on scientifically researched and approved methods. And we also advocate for a population study to be conducted. Because we don't really know, and the government doesn't know either, how many wombats are there in Victoria and how many of them have mange. I'm sure if we would have done a population study 10 or 20 years ago, we probably would be quite surprised on how much the numbers of wombats have been decreased in that time. But we just don't have any data at the moment. We only have anecdotally reports that from people that say there's been wombats where they live and there's no wombats anymore. So we also support relevant scientific research. We're working together with the University of Melbourne at the moment. So let's talk about why wombats are special. They are one of the largest burrowing animals in the world. They can run up to 40 km an hour just for a short distance, maybe 100 meters or so. They're just not built for sprinting. They sleep for up to 16 hours a day. A lot of people know that they've got cube-shaped poo, which is kind of funny, and they like to place that on logs or rocks high up. I always say I'd love to watch that at some stage just to see how they target that when they actually do it. But anyway, they've got incisor teeth. They continuously keep growing. So pretty much like rabbits. So they've got to wear them off. And when they're first born, they're just the size of a jelly bean and only weigh about 1 gram. They do improve soil health by turning over and mixing organic matter, which then brings deep soils and the nutrients to the surface and also increases the water filtration. And then, therefore it increases soil moisture. So we call wombats eco-engineers because they do help the environment with their digging. So wombats usually are active at night and they sleep during the day normally. So I've got a video here where you can see that one kind of just got up, late afternoon for us, early morning for this one. And the eyes are very heavy still. They are quite, it doesn't really want to wake up. It's a bit like me in the mornings. And it's just like, give me another 5 minutes. And the head falls down. So, it's just like people in the morning. They don't really want to get up and the eyes keep closing. The wombats come in all sorts of colors as well. They can be really dark, almost black, or they can be almost blonde like this one, who's being raised in a shelter down in South Gippsland. So depending on the local area, they can have different colors. And, anything in between blonde and dark. Like they can be reddish, they can be chocolate brown, they can be almost black. So they come in a range of colors. So the wombat lifespan in the wild is about 12 to 15 years. They've got obviously only the females, one joey every 2 to 3 years. And they mature at about 3 to 4 years old. So the best case scenario is that a female can have about 4 to 6 joeys in her life. So that's not a lot considering other animals. And we get to that in a minute. So the pouch of a wombat faces backwards. A lot of people don't know that. And it's to avoid the baby getting dirt in its face when the mom's digging. So here you can see a little one just peeking out of the pouch. And, that's at the back, the bum of the mom, basically. And the mom's head is on the other side. So she would only see her joey for the first time once the joey comes out of the pouch, because she can't turn around like that. Must be really strange. And you can see when they're about that size, about 2.5 kilos, they get quite active. They start grazing, they pop their head out and start chewing a bit on grass. So that's quite nice to see. It's very rare footage. We don't often get to see that. A landowner has won the trust of the wombat because she treated the wombat for mange, and now she trusts her and she can get fairly close and take a video like that. So while we talk about wombats in care and rehabilitation, so a joey will begin to emerge from the pouch at about 2.5 kilos. So that's about 7 months old. But, remember, they start out jelly bean size. So 2.5 kilo, that's a lot of growing that joey is doing in 7 months. But it will still be suckling until it's weaned at about 8 to 10 kilos when it's about 12 months old. And even after weaning, it will stay with mom for protection until it's about 2 years old or about 20 kilos in weight. If an unweaned joey is found without mom, they're likely taken into care. Like we had two this weekend, we got reported, thinking it was actually mange and they were on their own. So we had to catch them and bring them into care. If they're weaned and they're a bit bigger, they will be assessed whether they can, stay out there on their own if they're big enough, and if they're still healthy. A lot of the bigger ones, they try and find their own territory. They come into a territory that is already occupied, and they get beaten up by an adult wombat. That happens a lot. So it's kind of a tough journey for the juveniles as well. When they're in care, they go through various enclosures and care stages just to ensure that they're able to be released. Enclosures need to be dig-proof and predator-proof because they like to dig themselves out if they're not dig-proof. And then also the enclosures need to, when they are really little, they are in pouches just inside. And then when they get bigger, they need to be outside and then away from humans so they can get used to be a wild animal again. So there's guidelines specifying that should be returned to their home territory once they get released. So the wombats unfortunately face a number of threats. One is mange, the next one is car accidents, then we've got legal and illegal culling and the loss of habitat. And we are going to talk about all of them tonight. So let's start with the mange. What is mange? Mange is an infestation of the sarcoptic mange mite. It's not a disease, it's actually a parasite. It is invasive to Australia and it's believed to have arrived with the first European settlers. It actually affects over 100 species worldwide, including, like bears in the US, foxes in the UK. It can infect other wildlife here in Australia, like bandicoots, dingoes, winged opossums, foxes. It can be, and we've seen some wallabies as well with it. Of the native animals here in Australia, the greatest impact is on the wombats, and up to 90% of the wombat population, there's some mange in there. We are not quite sure why the wombats are impacted that much, because some other animals, they have it more like as a skin rash, skin disease, but they don't necessarily die from it. Whereas wombats, when they are infected with mange or infested, they can't recover on their own. If they don't get treated, they will die. It is, like I said, unclear why wombats are so affected, but They do share burrows with foxes that can transfer mange, but in Tasmania, they haven't got foxes, but still a big wombat mange problem. So there must be other vectors in play. The researchers think that the conditions of the burrow, it's high humidity. It's always about 10 to 15 degrees because they can be really deep. Those burrows can be up to 30 meters long, going under the soil. It's an optimal climate for the mites to thrive because they like cool and moist conditions. And they can survive without a host for about 2 to 3 weeks. So, they can hang around until they find a new host. There's also population stress, which affects wombats, and then they are more susceptible for mange. Also, the high densities of mite populations, if there are a lot around, then a wombat is much more likely to get mange, develop mange. So how does mange affect wombats? The first clinical signs are within 1 to 3 weeks of getting the mites onto them, and then they just get worse as they go. The female mites, they tunnel under the skin where they lay the eggs, and that causes really intense discomfort. They get really itchy, they start to scratch, and then scabs start to form over the wombat's body. The scabs, they become dry and split open, and then especially in summer, the wounds can become fly-blown and infected. So like I said before, unless they get treated, the infestation progresses, and then death usually occurs about 2 or 3 months after the infection. It really depends on the time of year and on the basically condition of the wombat before the infection, like if he was in good body shape or not so much. It's a really slow and horrible death. So we are trying to do what we can to save as many wombats as we can. There's disposal of diseased wombats is also important, that they not just get chucked into the next bush, because mites can survive for about 2 to 3 weeks after the host has died. So after the wombat has died, and then anything walking up to that carcass will get a really bad dose of mange, because the mites, they don't really care. They just need a new host. And it could be other animals. It could be other wombats. It could be other wildlife. It could be livestock. It could be a dog. It could be anything, whereas it's easily treatable in dogs. So how can you identify mange? Early mange, it kind of, I always say, it looks a bit like tiger stripes on the side of the wombats. It is a little bit of fur loss there. They might scratch a little bit. And wombats, they scratch actually to groom themselves. So don't think if you see a wombat scratching that it necessarily has got mange. If there's no fur loss visible, it might just groom itself. At that early stage, wombats are not usually seen during the daylight, and it's very treatable. Then there's moderate mange, where you've got a bit more fur loss and more crusty scabs begin to form, and it may or may not be alert, and it might come out during the day, or just start to come out during the day. And there's definitely noticeable scratching, and obviously you can see the fur loss quite well there. It's treatable if it hasn't got any bacterial infection. And then there's the severe or advanced stage with substantial fur loss, a lot of crusty scabs, and they may be infected and fly-blown. Often, if they are fly-blown and infected, they emit a really rotting flesh smell, like that dead smell you get when you drive past a decomposing animal or something. And it might be kinder to euthanize them, especially if bacterial infection is present, but each case needs to be assessed by an experienced treater or carer, and then, to see what options there are. So treating mange, where and why? So wild adult wombats, they don't cope well in captivity due to the stress, and they've already got a compromised immune system. So often they will die in within days if you bring them into care. Also, if they're removed from their territory, another wombat will likely move in, and then it's really difficult to return that wombat to its territory again, because another wombat took over, and they can be really nasty to each other and inflict quite bad wounds to each other. For this reason, unless it's an orphaned or young or vulnerable wombat, it is preferred to treat them in field, in their habitat where they live, wherever possible. And that's how we do that. Treating as soon as possible improves the outcomes. So if you see any, don't wait until it's getting worse. Report it to us as soon as you see them. Even if you're not sure, you take a photo and then you can send it to us, and then we can assess whether it is mange or something else going on. There's a couple of different methods of treatment. We've got the burrow flap here, which shows that wombat. If you look closely, you can see that flap, the medication spills on its bed now. And that's where it needs to go, onto the healthy part of the skin. And there's no stress involved for the wombat. They self-medicate when they exit or enter the burrow. And the burrow flap is actually just an ice cream container lid with like a medicine cup inserted, and the medication goes in there. And then it's set up on a wire frame. So it's a fairly easy thing to set up, and everybody can do that. And, you can do that during the day. And then, when the wombat comes out at night, they get a treatment, and it only needs to be done once a week. The other treatment is with the pole and scoop. That's like an old broom handle with a laundry detergent scoop taped on it. You can see the wombat here in the video, and then you can see me creeping up with my pole and scoop with a nice and bright pink scoop, the medication in there. And that was actually in the Botanic Gardens up in Olinda. And I put the medication on its back. And, that often what happens if, like here, they stop when they are close to their burrow, they feel safe. So I could take the opportunity to sneak up onto him. It's very important to not chase them, not stress them, but just take it slowly and and then, slowly sneak up to them and treat them. So mange can be treated. That's one of our success stories with a mom and baby kind of quite severely affected by mange. And then a few weeks after they started the treatment, you can see how the new fur, the scabs have come off, and the new fur has started to appear. And then a few weeks later, the fur was fully grown back. So now car accidents. All of you would have seen wombats and other wildlife on the side of the road. Unfortunately, a lot of healthy wombats are getting themselves killed, and the others, die from mange. So they're really doing it tough out there. It's very important, if you see any that haven't been marked, often carers or rescuers, they spray them just to show that they've been checked. If they haven't been checked, it's always a good idea, if you can stop safely, to check if they've got a pouch and if there's a baby in there. Often they can survive up to a week in their mom's pouch, depending on the weather conditions. So you can save a life if you stop and check a pouch. Twice as many wombats are male that are killed compared to females. And like I said, the majority doesn't have mange. It happens, but not that much. So what could be the solutions for the car accidents? The major one is really to slow down on the roads at night, as well as during dawn and dusk. If you drive carefully and always be prepared that, something might run onto the road, then, that helps a lot. There's several wildlife warning devices. the high frequency car mounted devices, they probably don't work that well. Some cars have warning devices built into them, but more expensive cars usually. What works quite well, we've been finding, is the virtual fencing. It reduces that a lot. So big roads or the council, depending on what roads, who owns the roads, can help. So in my area, Manningham Council put a virtual fence up and an overpass and underpass, and we had a wombat or wallaby or something killed there every 2 weeks before that happened in that area, and now it's maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Of course, it costs all money, but it does save lives, so it works quite well. In other countries, you can see on the left, they've got those huge wildlife crossings, again, very expensive, but it does really work well. On the right, you can see like an overpass just made out of rope. The one we've got set up here, we had a camera up there and we could see a couple of phascogales using it, which was quite exciting, and some possums as well. So they do work out over time that they can safely cross on those overpasses. So now we get onto the culling. So a lot of farmers don't like wombats too much. There's a lot of, education required, and also some solutions like wombat gates on the left, or, just a cheaper do-it-yourself version with a mini goat farmer called David Punchen came up. It's just a log, and it's on the lowest strand of the fence, and the wombats, they are strong enough to push through that, but his goats are not. So the goats will stay inside and the wombats can come and go, and that works quite well. The loss of habitat, as you can see here, is quite severe over the years. So the lighter areas, that's where they used to be. So even the northern hairy-nosed wombat, which, were almost got extinct, there were only like 35 left or something. The bright red areas where they used to be, and now they're only in a couple of small locations in Queensland, very heavily protected, so they don't go extinct. And then we've got, they're still called common there, but we don't call them common anymore here. They are the bare-nosed wombats. And even they had a much bigger range, even in Western Victoria, where we barely have any anymore. And then, of course, the southern hairy-nosed wombat. So that's the 3 types we've got in Australia, and all of them have lost a lot of their habitat. What that means for the wombats, you can see here. So on the left, we've been treating that one in a new estate. There was just a vacant lot with the new fencing, a new housing estate that has gone up. And of course, the wombats, they lose their burrows, they lose their homes, they get stressed, and this one got mange, and we treated it on that vacant lot. On the right-hand side, this one was quite a few years ago now, wandered one Monday morning in the middle of Pakenham. And you might know Pakenham, it's kind of a fairly big town now. And in the middle of Pakenham, that wombat was seen. Again, a lot of new housing estates were going up. A lot of them were just losing their burrows and then got confused and didn't know where they need to go. So I caught that one actually in the entrance of a shopping center, which is quite sad if you think about that. We have over the years learned a lot about wombat behavior. I let that video play. That's quite interesting what we've learned there. So why would a wombat strip bark a tree? I mean, it's quite keen on doing that. And then she was dragging it back to the burrow. So the burrow is just that darkish hole to the left of her. She's really working hard there with all the material she's got there. And then we knew when that was coming up. Don't know, it's a bit hard to see, but there's a little baby just emerged out of, oops, it is tumbling down again into the burrow, just emerged out of the pouch. And the mom was just getting some nice bedding just to keep the baby warm in the burrow. So that was quite heartwarming to see how they look after their babies. Another thing we've learned is, and it's not a joke, I promise, one female wombat and a joey enter the burrow. So you can see here, the mom always goes in first, the baby follows. And then one female wombat and two joeys exit, which was kind of interesting. That burrow, even though wombats usually are solitary, most of them anyway, that burrow was used by about 4 or 5 wombats, and one had mange, and then we had set up a camera. We saw that a lot of wombats have been using that burrow, and we kind of think the other mum must have been in there and probably said to that one, can you take my kid out to play, or something like that. We are not quite sure, but it's really interesting what we learn by setting up those night vision cameras. And they are quite cheap nowadays. So it's quite interesting to see what's around. So how can you help? What I mentioned before, watch out for wildlife and slow down at night. If you see any wombats with mange, please report them to us via our website. That's the best way. We've got a report a wombat form on there, which captures all the details we need. And then you can also do that via your mobile. And it's always a good idea if you've got photos of the wombat. Live with the wildlife if you have them in the area. Check pouches of wildlife that have been hit by a car, like I mentioned before. You can volunteer for us or donate to us. Details are on our website. The medication we use is quite expensive. It's $100 for one treatment. So we are grateful for any donations. Please also spread the word. Tell other people how they can help. Please tell them that wombats with mange are treatable. They can be saved, as you've seen tonight. Other things you can do is the new container deposit scheme in Victoria. If you collect bottles or cans at home or at school or at your workplace, you can choose Mange Management as the donation partner on your app when you return the cans and bottles to one of the nominated return points, and then we will get the deposit. So every little bit helps, even if it's only 50 cents or $1 or something. Also, shopping at Richie's IGA, you can take out a community benefit card and register it to Mange Management. And again, it doesn't cost you anything, but if enough people do it, we'll get a small donation. It's like only 0.5% or something of what people shop. But again, it's $30 or $40 a month we are getting at the moment, and every little bit helps.